we're going to look at fluid layout and max width. This properties that will make a page like a standard HTML5 page into a responsive design. Responsive design is where something will look good across multiple devices of multiple sizes like phones, tablets, and browsers on computers. So let's go ahead and look at what we start with in Chrome. And we're going to look at the downloads that we got from the publisher. And we're going to go into a folder called Structural Semantics. And we're going to look at a page called Semantic Elements with Sections. So you can see it's just a basic HTML5 page. We have headings, we have navigation set up as a list, we have an image, we have some content and text format, we have some links. When we scale this, everything scales okay. It's not elegant, but the image does not scale. So let's address that first. We need to make the image responsive before we can move on. We're going to go to our Sublime text editor and open the same file. And it's Semantic Elements with Sections. And we need to add some CSS to this. We're going to add an internal style sheet, which means it's only going to apply to this page, and we put it in the head of this document. So I'm going to come in the head right before the closing head tag and after our title. And I'm going to write the area for our CSS rules. I'm going to set up our style tags. And I'm going to go ahead and do the closing tag while I'm here so I don't forget to do it. Now I'm going to use a tag selector for our image, the IMG tag, so I can write a rule that applies to that HTML tag. So up here in the style area, write the selector, do my curly braces, and I'm going to write a declaration that'll help our image scale with the browser. And I'm just going to write width %. I also need to go down into the body area and delete some HTML coding we've done before to make the image scale properly. I'm going to go into the image tag for the tawny frog mouth. And I'm going to delete the height and the width for the HTML. This will not let our image scale properly, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to save this and we'll look at it in the browser. Refresh that. Now you can see it gets really large, and when we resize the browser, it does scale. But we need to amend this. This is better, but it's scaling much too large. It's scaling larger than the actual size we built the image at in our graphics apps such as Photoshop. So I'm going to limit that to the maximum size that the image was really built at so we can control it better on our page. So I'm going to go back into Sublime Text. I'm going to edit our CSS rule for the image. I'm going to say max-width. And save that. And this will only let it scale as big as its original build size in the graphics program. Refresh that in the browser. So that's what we originally built the image as. But the good news is when you scale the browser, it will still scale responsively. So we can't distort it by making it bigger than its original size. Next thing we want to do is we want to limit the width of our text on the page so that it will look more designed. So we're going to use the most global HTML tag that controls the page. We're going to write a tag selector for our body tag in our CSS and apply a width there. So we're going to go back into the style area in the head of our document and use a tag selector for the body tag. This will apply to everything inside the body tag, and I'm going to use my curly braces. I'm going to write a declaration here that sets the page width to a set max width of 800 pixels. We're not going to do a %. We want to only let the page go so wide, and we'll define that with pixels. Max width colon 800 px. Let's save that and look at it in the browser. All right, now you can see that our content along with the image has a limited width. And when we scale the browser, it continues to scale responsively, but it does not go wider than 800 pixels. So we kind of start to have control of our page. Let's center the page now. In the body, let's set a margin dash left to auto and a margin right to auto. So we can come back into our code and right in our body rule, we'll come and we'll write a couple of new declarations. We'll go margin dash left, auto, and we can write margin dash right, auto, and this should center our page. And there we have it. We're starting to put a design together. Still responsive, still scales, but it just puts it in the middle of the page when the browser's large. Now let's do this. Look at it when it's small in the responsive. It's kind of pushed together on the edges. Let's set a width of the body to 90%. This will help us with side spacing when we have a narrow viewport or browser window. So we're just going to go back into our body tag up here in the CSS rules. We're going to write width 90%. So it'll only get as big as 90% of the browser window when it goes to a small browser. I'm going to refresh, and this should give us some spacing along the sides. Now we have some margins built in when it gets small, and it doesn't affect anything when it gets larger. So now we're starting to have a page that looks like it's being put together. What we want to do now is we want to create a background color for the page, and then we want to create a different background color inside where the content is so it's easily readable. So let's put a wrapper around our content. Right now when we apply a background color, all we can do is apply a background color to the body tag, and that'll make the page all one color. What we want to do is have our content have one color and the body around it have a different color. So we're going to put a container from the box model. We're going to put a container around all of our content, starting where the fish and fowl is. And that container is going to be a rectangle that goes all the way down and ends after our footer where all wrongs are reversed. We're going to use a div tag for this. A div is a container. It works with the box model. So we're going to go into our HTML, and right inside the opening body tag in our HTML, we're going to add a div. We're going to wrap this div around everything on the page. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and close this right before our closing body tag. So that div is around every piece of content on the page. Now in our div tag, we need to add some styles to this div tag specifically. I'm going to use an ID selector. We've looked at tag selectors. We've looked at class selectors. We're going to look at an ID selector. It works like a class selector, but it has a different syntax. So in the div, I'm going to go inside the opening div tag, and I'm going to write ID equals, and we're going to come up with a name for the rule, and this is going to be called wrapper because it's wrapping around all the content on the page. Now that we have this defined, we need to go actually write the ID style in the head of our document. So I'm going to come back inside of our style tags and come down below the image rule. I like to write my classes and my IDs below my tag selectors in my CSS rules. So I'm going to put it down below my last tag selector, which is the image. And for IDs, the syntax, instead of a dot for class, for IDs, you're going to use a hashtag. and you put the name that you've given the ID in there. We're going to use wrapper. Give it a space, put your curly braces in. Come down and you can start writing some styles for that. What we're actually going to do instead of write styles, we're going to steal the styles that we put into the body because that already has our width of the page set up. We want to kind of control the width of the content and all the contents in the wrapper. So I'm going to just come and steal all these rules from the body, the width 90%, the max width 800 pixels, and the margin left auto, margin right auto. So I'm going to cut those, come inside the wrapper, and paste those. Now I'm going to save this. We'll look at it in the browser. And nothing changes. All we basically did is we were using the body to set the width of the page and set the centering of the page. We built a container called div, and we put those same rules on div. So there's the div that you cannot see going around everything that's setting the width of the page. We did this so we can use two different background colors. So now let's go to the wrapper and set our background color to all white. So we're going to come in the wrapper rule in our CSS in the head of the document and just write a new declaration that says background dash color hashtag, and we're going to put in the hexadecimal code. There's 6 characters in hexadecimal color. The first 2 are the red, the second 2 are the green, and the last 2 are the blue values. This should just create a white background color for us. So let's save it and check. And nothing changes. Now let's change the background color of the body area, the page that's outside of our container, that's outside of our wrapper div. You'll see why we had to set the background color of the div to white. Go back to our code editor, go back to our body tag. We're going to put a declaration inside our body tag for background color. Put your hashtag in, and let's make that all 5s. Save that. Fresh. Now you can see that we have a background color on the page. If we have not put the div on the page and put the white background color, let me show you what would have happened. If we did not have the div, the page would all look like this. That's really hard to read. That's not good design. There's not enough contrast between our text and our page. That's just a non-elegant page. So that's why we actually had to put the div on the page so we could set a separate background color from the page background color that we set in the body. So let's fix that. Go back to our wrapper and put our background color back in as white so it looks good. Save that, and we'll proof that. Now you'll notice that we have a lot of stuff that's bunched up along the sides of our container inside the div. We need to work with some of that. What we're going to do is we're going to use padding. Remember, in the box model, you have 3 elements. In the box, which is our div, you have the border, you have space outside of that, which is the margin, and space between the content and the inside of the box, which is the padding. So we need to set some padding to push this content away from the walls of our box. Come back into our wrapper and add a declaration of padding. And let's set that to 16 pixels. Save that. Refresh that. Notice we now have a bit of space around the top, the right, the bottom, and the left of our container for our content. So that looks a little bit better. You can control the padding individually, but by just putting padding 16 pixels, it's going to put it around all sides. And that's how you can turn a basic HTML5 page into a more impressive but basic responsive design.